All right. So, hi, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we have a special guest with us, and her name is Wannessa Badger. She is someone who I have connected with in the Instagram space and also is recently venturing out doing other things. So, I really wanted her to come on because we have so many shared values. She has an incredible story, and she really is a representation for the journey of overcoming and so many things that she's done along her journey. So I'm going to pass it over to her today to introduce herself and we'll get going.
All right, thank you, Taylor. Hi, everyone. My name is Wannessa, and I'm so excited to be here to have a transparent and an organic conversation around overcoming, right? And for many of us that come to this space and want to connect on these topics, we've overcome trauma. We've overcome whether it's childhood trauma, personal trauma, generational trauma. There is this desire within our being to overcome these blocks that have been developed because of a consequence of what happened to us that was out of our control. And so I'm really looking forward to sharing a little bit of my story and maybe a lot of my story. I'm an open book, so wherever this goes will be great. And I really hope that it's medicine for anyone that's listening to know that we're in this together. And I actually had someone reach out the other day. She had said that she felt really uncomfortable sharing her experience. She had trauma of sexual abuse.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, it feels really strange admitting this to a stranger or talking about this to a stranger because I really haven't shared this before.
Yeah.
And my response to her was, there is a sisterhood or a brotherhood, right? And I know there's many
Mhm.
brothers,
Yeah.
out there that, and when I say brothers, I just mean fellow human beings, right? That
Absolutely.
especially the males that they have kept a secret and they don't feel comfortable bringing it out. But I told her, you felt within your intuition to be willing to share. And even though we are technically strangers, there's an understanding. There's this sisterhood of understanding when you've experienced sexual trauma or any type of trauma, whether it's that fractures your own self-esteem, your sense of self-worth, right? But especially sexual trauma, because there's an understanding that many times family members or even friends can't really ever understand what kind of wound
Yes.
that plays. What
It's
kind of
everything. It's absolutely everything. Being a survivor myself. I was 22 when it happened and for me, it was not as much of the physical as it was the emotional and the spiritual damage that it did to me. And, like that sense of who I am, that the loss of control, I feel like, and it's like for most people, it's such an important, sacred thing. And for that to be taken from people is just like, it's heavy. It can be really heavy and really hard to navigate. And I think we all handle it differently. Like for your friend, maybe that who came forward, like they handled it by just not saying anything. And I did the opposite. I actually like told anyone and everyone. I was like, oh my gosh, this happened to me. Guy at the gas station. I was off and I was like, oh my gosh, this just happened to me recently. And that's why I'm off. Like I had to like justify why I was the way I was. And there was like no filter because my body was just in shock and overload for months after.
wounds?
So, I'm glad we're touching on this topic today because it's one of those things that we don't talk about it because it's uncomfortable sometimes, right? But then what happens is there's so many people who are suffering in silence and feel alone until someone starts talking about it and you realize that it's not as rare as you think it is, right?
Mhm.
And I know personally when I came and told everyone what happened, it was about like 1 in 4 people I told who either them or someone they knew. And I would guess that the numbers are probably even more, that those are just the people who would admit something happened to me, to connect with me, to help me. And, it's really sad. It's a very sad, hard thing to go through. And I'm so glad that you're on sharing more about this today.
With pleasure. At this point in my journey, it really is with pleasure
Mhm.
to share and to be transparent, because where I'm at on my journey is it doesn't define who I am. And there's a disconnection now. There's a piece that's been made with my own inner child and releasing of the disillusion of shame that came along with it. Now, for me, I was sexually abused between the age of 3 and 5.
Mhm.
And it was my grandfather on my mother's side, and he was visiting from Guatemala. So when he had left, and I struggled for 2 years, right? So, more than that, but what I'm trying to say, before I broke the silence,
Yeah.
I was having nightmares because he would come and get me in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
So I had really hard time sleeping.
Mhm.
I had nightmares. I didn't couldn't tell my mom, so I would pretend that I had a nightmare about a dinosaur. I would make up these nightmares just so my mom would let me stay
Oh
in her
my
bed and she could
gosh.
cuddle me, right?
Yeah.
And so I told her when I was 7. Now, here's the thing that is really difficult when individuals are coming forward and breaking the silence. There's this great amount of fear about what kind of response is gonna be given.
Yes.
Love my mom, and I know that in the moment was it was a defense mechanism. It was her way of just like I think she was in shock when I told her,
Yeah.
but her first response to me was, "But I told you not to sit on anybody's lap."
Mm.
And as a 7-year-old, that being the first response,
Yeah.
really devastating for me because in the moment, I was kinda, like, laughing, like, I was kinda, like, chuckling in a way because I was
Mhm.
so uncomfortable. She's like, "No way. No, no. My father?" I'm like, "Yeah, yeah," and she's like, "No, but I slept in the same bed as him when I was little," and then it, went to, like, "I told you not to sit on anybody's lap," and
Mhm.
it was really hurtful, and I carried that for a long, long time. And when I so that coming forward, sometimes can compound that trauma of shame that is
Absolutely.
so it's like I said, it's a disillusion.
Mhm.
So, I I can share my story as well, how I got to where I'm at today.
Mhm.
This disconnection, this peace, and almost I've gotten to a point where I don't need to tell my story.
Oh, yeah.
Where I definitely had to tell my story. I gravitated towards individuals. I It's interesting because a lot of the friends that I made throughout my childhood,
Mhm.
and the ones that I gravitated towards, ended up discovering that they were survivors as well.
Mm. It's like we know. It's like it's this comfort that, like, when you go through a shared trauma, it does bond you in a way, right? It's like this unspeakable thing that is just so challenging to process, and whether you're a young child or a grown up, like, you understand that, like, it feels so lonely and there's no one who could possibly understand the feelings in your body and in your mind and this war inside you that's happening unless they've been there.
Yeah,
And there's this extra comfort level, this extra, like, layer of shedding shame when we know someone else has been there because they're not going to judge, right? And
mhm,
so just naturally we kind of feel that, and I resonate with you as well. Like, I look back as a teenager and I was around people who didn't say it at the time, but they were dealing with significant trauma in their household. And those were the people I gravitated towards. And so, it's really interesting because it's like somehow we find our community. Like, I would love to look into more research to that, to, like, if they know if there actually is, like, a psychological link to that. Because looking back in my life, that's definitely happened too. And it's like we're creating our own safe space with people who get it.
yeah. Yeah, when I look back for me, what when I think of my younger selves, I know that I saw a quality in these ladies, these young girls, these friends that I developed. There was this quality of this unspoken, like you said, inner struggle that I could notice.
Mhm.
Also, there's behaviors that show up that
Yeah.
I also saw reflected, mirrored back, like, "Oh, I get that." I get that kind of behavior,
Mhm.
and there's something underneath that. And so part of my life journey is I've been very much drawn to shadow work since I was little.
Mhm.
And just organically, before I even knew what shadow work was, I wanted to understand why I was doing something the way I was doing. Why are other people doing the way
Mhm.
doing those things? And even to, yes, I would look at the trauma influenced and trauma backed behaviors, but I also looked at the positive, the healthy.
Mhm.
What do healthy relationships look like? What does a healthy mother-daughter relationship look like? What is a
Yes.
healthy father-son or father-daughter relation? I was always very curious. What does a good friendship look like? And so
Mhm.
from a young age, I started studying, observing, and then I ended up going and getting my degree in child development and family studies to really do a deep dive on inner child healing and shadow work, because that's pretty much what that degree is.
That's
Um,
awesome.
and then learning about what healthy relationships, especially for the family studies, like what makes it unhealthy, what are the dynamics of an unhealthy relationship and the consequences. You get
Yes.
family dynamics and attachment and all that. And
Mhm.
so the reason for all that is I knew that I wanted to have a family of my own, and my father was not in the picture. He couldn't stop partying, and he had his own inner demons from
Yeah.
his own traumatic childhood as well. And I
It is
came to
so common, that generational link right there, like, absolutely.
Mhm. Yeah. So before I knew what a cycle breaker was as well, I knew that I wanted to be the change. My mom came from a family of a lot of trauma with, come to discover sexual abuse, which is very common in a lot of Hispanic households and probably other cultures, of course. There's no doubt about it. I think it's 1 in 5 women,
Yeah.
last I checked, have been are survivors, but just all brushed under the rug. So speaking about that silence, like, oh, so and so did, molest or abuse or rape that
Mhm.
family member,
Yeah.
but it's brushed under the rug. Don't talk about it. We have to learn how to forgive. Bringing in religion to manipulate. It's gaslighting, all that jazz. I
Yeah.
experienced that, and so I have nothing to do with that family anymore. And then on my father's side, a lot of alcoholism. Um, a lot homelessness and broken
Mm.
broken homes, where the other one, like the mother would stay in the other side of the family, they would stay with the horrible
Yeah.
husband or father, and the other was a lot of divorce. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have no good examples on either side of my family of what a healthy marriage relationship looks like. So
Yeah.
that's why I went into studying it to a very deep level.
I love
And
that.
yeah, so I'm definitely accomplished. I have girlfriends that super healthy. There's no trauma bonding at all there. It's
Mhm.
all organic soul connections. We've been best friends for decades.
It's
We've grown
amazing.
together. There's never been backstabbing. It is seriously so amazing and beautiful. My husband, we've been together for almost 15 years. We're still so in love with each other. It's the full package. We're still attracted to each other. As a survivor of sexual trauma, that's a big hurdle
That's
to,
incredible. Yeah.
right?
I mean, just the relationships. I mean, the fact that you have so many fulfilling relationships right now, I mean, knowing what happened and knowing the link that could possibly break down and like have more of those unhealthy relationship patterns and not even being aware. And the fact that not only are you aware, but you have fulfilling, deep soul connections is just incredible. And I really want to commend you for that, because that is something that so many struggle with. And I think that you just being able to do that in your own personal life can help so many people learn how to do it themselves. Like between your professional background and your personal experiences, like that's why I do what I do too. Like my professional background and personal experiences. I think that that just makes so much more power in healing and supporting others, and it shows in what you do. It really does. And that's probably why you and I connected so well, because we get
Yes.
the psychology side of it and
Uh-huh.
like all of the things. So I love it so much.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I feel so validated, feel so seen and so inspired, because it really is, that is the marathon that I'm committed to.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, the biggest key to get there was releasing that shame.
Yes.
That was a pivotal point in my in interpersonal relationship, my interpersonal
Yes.
healing
Yes.
was so for me, I actually had my first awakening when I was 10 years old.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I know. I mean, maybe because I grew up in the church. I don't even know. Like, I really can't explain it. And that's why I really am into transpersonal psychology. Transpersonal is beyond the personal, beyond, it
Yeah.
means beyond personality, beyond personal. There is an element, I think, that for those that are willing to open their mind or even explore, maybe it's not even that big of a deal to understand that and to acknowledge that we are more than our body and our thoughts and our emotions, that there's a there's something else there, right? And
Yeah.
for me,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
spirit, it's a soul. I actually think that they're two different things, actually.
Ooh.
And but that's for another conversation.
I
But
know. We could talk about that for a long time.
right. So I was 10 years old, really random. I'm coming in from recess, and I had this realization that I was not really happy. I was putting on it.
Mm.
Honestly, to me, it was a spiritual experience because as a 10-year-old, why in the world would I stop in my tracks to think, you're not happy? It was almost like a voice telling me, like, you're not happy, you're faking it. You're just putting on a smile on your face.
Wow.
And so I questioned it. Like I said, I love shadow work. I'm like,
Mhm.
let's dig into this. Maybe it's this, that's actually, if we want, just for fun, my south node is Scorpio. So for anyone who's an astrology buff, like, you understand why shadow work is one of my one of my life gifts. So
My
that I
Pluto is in Scorpio, so I
what's that?
have my Pluto is in Scorpio, so I get the big transformation with yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, you get it. So
Mhm.
I and then I realized, okay, so why am I putting a smile on my face? Why am I faking this? Oh, because I'm actually really sad.
Yeah.
Why am I really sad? Why am I, I didn't know depression at the time, but like, why am I feeling this way?
Yeah.
And then I had a picture of my 3-year-old self come into my mind of experiencing sexual trauma.
Wow.
And I realized I'm still sad about that.
Yeah.
I still feel broken about that. And in fact, I feel ashamed about it. I
Mhm.
feel that, and this is me 10 years old, I feel that everyone can look at me and see that I'm damaged, that
Mm.
I'm not good enough. I'm connecting with this little girl right now. So, and she really felt like everyone could see that she wasn't who she was. Like, I felt like everyone thought like could see that I was a fraud, or that I wasn't, like, in a weird way, this imposter syndrome, right? As a 10-year-old. And then I realized, then I got actually angry. There was a part of
Oh,
me,
yeah.
there was a part of me that was like, no, no, no. And here's the thing. This is what I fought for. No way is that monster, that predator,
Mhm.
going to continue to sabotage and abuse me anymore.
Yes.
That person does not get to affect the rest of my life.
I'm right there with you. That's what woke me up too. They don't get that much power over you.
Mhm.
Like, just I just wanna stop for a minute and acknowledge that, like, that narrative is so powerful. The moment you decide they don't get to be the one to control me anymore. They don't get to be the reason that I have this shame. They don't get to control my life, how I feel about myself. They already hurt me. They already did what they did. And there's still going to be things that I'm going to have to work on. But in this moment right now, you were choosing to take back the power of your own life. You chose, you're like, I'm going to reclaim myself and my life and who I am away from all of this that's happened. And that is just so profound, especially for a 10-year-old. Like, there are 40, 50-year-olds who still can't do that. Like, that's incredible. And that is that pivotal moment. And I think in so many people's healing journey that it just shifts the moment that you decide, I'm the one in control. I'm taking back power over myself. I'm not going to be hiding how I feel. I'm not going to be allowing them to be this way or make me this way. I hit that realization for me with my sexual assault when I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disorder. There's no links in my family. And the emerging research with significant trauma and autoimmune conditions. And I was just like, and now I am physically marked and physically damaged. And I remember the anger that came out with that. And, the power for me was reclaiming my life as far as the physical stuff. Um, and the emotional child from dealing with the house of like emotional and physical abuse growing up, like it all linked. And I really, right after I was assaulted, when I was an adult, I was like, no, this is not controlling me. I've already overcome so much in my childhood. This is not controlling me, right? And so I resonate so much with that. It takes such strength. And just the fact that you did that as a child, like for anyone who's watching right now, like it's moving, and I can see that it's like physically and emotionally moving you. And I hope that's your inner child being so proud and so honored, because that's exactly what you were able to do.
Yeah, there is so much gratitude that this message was given to me, because after I got angry, I was like, no, I put my foot down, and then I had
Mm,
another image of like, this is what you were born as. This is who you truly are. And it was an image of myself just happy. I'm like,
oh,
so I connected. I'm like, I was born a happy soul, this spirit. I love people, and I love to be friendly, and I love to welcome individuals, and I'm not going to let what happened rob me of my essence of who I truly am.
yeah.
And so that's like you said, I reclaim my happiness.
Mhm.
And so, yes, I was putting a smile on my face, but then I realized, like, no, who I truly am is a happy, bubbly, loves to connect, loves people, loves to share my light. That
Yeah.
was one of the songs that I learned in school, that for so many years when I was having those dark nights of the soul, because yes, this was a great awakening, but it wasn't an immediate overnight healing. Okay,
Mhm.
it was still miraculous. Don't get me wrong, because it put me on a trajectory of self healing and self discovery, and for a reason. I love to talk about this. I love to share with people, and that's part of my purpose. Our purpose is our passion, right?
Yes.
I'm not here to
Oh,
fix
yes.
anybody. I'm not here to fix anyone. I'm not here to fix anything. We're meant to have a life where we live in joy, that we love what we do, and that we bless the world doing it. And so this
Mhm.
happens to be part of that. I'm still figuring it out exactly, because it's so much fun. But I so I realized, okay, I was a happy person. Okay, so here's the second half of the awakening. All of a sudden, I realized that yes, this happened to me. Now, here's another detail to my story that is actually really important, and I realized this later when I've shared the story before. I was actually born with a rare kidney disease, and I was supposed to supposedly die before the age of 1, but it didn't end up killing me, but I ended up having a lot of issues, a lot of problems with my health. I was in and out of the hospital so much throughout my childhood. Um, and I had my left kidney removed when I was 7, but I always had so many stomach issues, so many issues with my body, so many medications. I had
Mhm.
asthma. I mean, I was hospitalized for pneumonia multiple times a year, bronchitis, and allergies. And so the reason I'm sharing this is that when I ended up having this connection in my mind that I was born a happy spirit, and that my soul is wants to share love and wants to be a light. I had this thought, no, this earthly plane can harm my body, right? It can, like, I
Yeah.
had with my physical body with health, and then I was traumatized, and my body was put in shock, and it messed with my mind, my brain, and my sense of self and my sense of self-worth. But I realized that it can never, no matter what happens in this lifetime, it can never touch the purity of my spirit, my
Mm.
limitless, timeless, beautiful, loving spirit. And to me,
Absolutely.
I experienced my wholeness for the first time.
I love that. And I just wanna, like, emphasize that there's so much that people, like you feel like you've lost or that's damaged or, like those things, right? But like who you are underneath all of that doesn't change. The truest essence of you, your soul, your spirit, whatever you want to call it, that doesn't get affected by what happened to you. There's layers and there's conditioning and there's, our brain start, gets programmed a certain way and we start developing all these negative beliefs about ourselves, but it's not you. And to anyone who needs to hear it, like you are not your trauma. That's not your
Yes.
identity. And it feels like it. It feels like it, right? Because we're so wrapped up in it and it affects everything, like holistically, everything about us, from the environments that we choose to be around to the way our brain functions. I mean, there's just so many things that are impacted by trauma. But what's incredible is knowing that that is all stuff that you can work on overcoming. You can get back to yourself. It's not going to say that the symptoms of trauma are ever going to completely disappear, because I believe healing is a constant journey in life. I do. But it's to say that you really can find yourself again, awaken to who you are, just like you did as a child. Seeing your soul for the first time, like that is an awakening. Like, and for anyone who's not spiritual, they might be like, what are they talking about? The awakening is literally just recognizing who you are, your place in this world, and your greater purpose, and
Yes.
the connectedness of all of us and the things that you've experienced. And it's an individual journey within a collective experience.
Mm-hmm.
And the moment you recognize how deep that goes, that's what a lot of people call a spiritual awakening. Because a lot of people at that point, they make big shifts in their life. And it may be at like rock bottom or after trauma or things like that. But it's just this realization that you're not living the way that you are destined to be living. There's more out there. And you start getting curious and you start diving into your own journey of self-development. And
Mm.
I love that for you, that started at 10 years old when you said, I'm not happy. Like, that is so profound.
Thank you.
So,
Oh
so
my gosh, I
profound.
love that the way you described awakening, like, and all those elements and just that self-awareness that comes into play.
Yeah.
And yes, and it's a process of reclaiming what we
Mhm.
have forgotten, right?
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it. I know. I'm like, oh, we are so on the same page with this. Woo, it just makes me happy. And again,
Oh,
it's like
yeah.
I feel so validated just being able to show up and share these things, because for me, there were parts of myself that I hid that didn't fit into this little model or this box that everyone told me I should be in, right? Whether that's my parents not accepting or society setting standards, like, and so when we reclaim those parts of ourselves and say, you know what? No, I'm going to talk about this. This is a passion. This is incredible, right? Like
Mhm.
for me, just talking about spiritual awakening with you is so deeply fulfilling to that part of me and that inner child who suppressed so many of these things. Because I had spiritual experiences when I was younger as well,
Mm.
but I suppressed them. I acted like it didn't happen. I was just like in denial because it didn't feel safe to explore for me in my household, right? So just the fact that you felt comfortable enough with yourself, you were able to explore what was going on, and that started this like pivotal journey for you of where you are now as an adult. Like that's, like your profession. That's incredible. And I think anyone listening and myself are just so inspired by that.
Mm.
So
Thank you.
inspired.
Thank you. Yeah, it's been an amazing ride, I'll say, and definitely have had a lot of hurdles come my path that, after that, it was just wanting more. You mentioned that curiosity when you have an awakening, then you
Mhm.
start asking, you want to learn more and more. And you could have found me in the self-help aisle of the bookstore or the library as a teenager going through books. And there is this concept that I have seen trend through Instagram or social media that, oh, if you're an empath, that it's probably because you were a trauma survivor. Have you
Mm.
come across that?
I have heard that, yes.
Just
Because
being
it's like we had to
hypersensitive.
adapt, right? Like you had to know what everyone else was feeling. You had to internalize, you had to pick up on all these cues.
Mhm.
And so it becomes like an adaptive response.
Yeah. But
Mhm.
even still, I mean, even it doesn't even have to be, any type of, I guess, any type of initiative or catalyst to create that hypersensitivity as a child is can happen. But some people are just born really sensitive, it's
Yeah.
and so I actually am on the fence of it could be either or. But
Yeah.
for me, I was definitely empathic. I could feel people's energy. I could feel when someone was angry. And yes, my mom was a loose cannon. So she
Mhm.
never knew when she was going to get home. It's almost as if I could tell by the way she was opening the door, like the way the keys jangled, like
Yes.
whether or not she was going to be in a good mood or a bad mood,
Mhm.
whether she was going to get ticked off about something random in the house not being done, or if she was going to come in wanting to be lovey-dovey. And I
Yeah.
hated that. I hated it. I did not like living on eggshells
Oh, yeah.
living my life, my home life, wondering what my mom's going to be doing.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that was part of my journey, is learning, like, why was that so impactful on me? Why did I hate that as a child? What did that cause in me?
Mhm.
And how can I prevent that from doing that to my children, right?
Oh,
So,
yeah.
uh, yeah, so being an empath, I would start looking into researching how can I protect myself? How can I still be of service? And here it is like, how can I still honor my light? Oh, I mentioned the song is This Little Light of Mine that I love.
Mhm.
I'm going to let it shine. So how can I still show up for people the way that I want to love the individuals that cross my path
Yeah.
without feeling completely drained and so sad, when they share their stories. Since I was little, I've had individuals just share their stories with me. And
Yeah, me too.
yeah, so I'm
Mhm.
just, so I love to hear the stories. I love being there for people, but I found myself sometimes feeling the aftermath, like the heaviness of it, or feeling,
Mhm.
carrying on the emotion, taking on the emotion. I started noticing that some individuals
Yeah.
were starting to take advantage of that, and so how could I start to still be of service, but still protect my energy field, is really the way. I didn't have the words for it,
Yeah.
but we're all energy. So,
Mhm.
um, and so then I started looking into learning about boundaries, communicating boundaries, started learning about how to ground myself so that I can hold firm, but not take in what others are giving.
Yeah.
And so that was a nice period of my journey, learning about that, and then diving into the studies. But it took a long time to get to the point where I didn't feel the need to tell my story anymore, unless I know that it's going to be medicine for someone else. And so
Absolutely.
that's that's me sharing today. I don't know.
No, I love it. I resonate so much with that, and thank you for sharing and being so vulnerable and open. I think that it does help so many people who are stuck in that feeling of alone or silence or, like that shame, just to hear people like openly and confidently say, like, this happened and it didn't change who I am. Like, that's why I do what I do. I know that's a lot of the reason why you do what you do. And just, when we do it often, we forget the power that it holds. But I just want to remind you, like, that is an incredible, powerful tool for connection and support for people who have been through things like you. And, I love how you said, like, I don't need to share my story anymore. Like, I don't feel that need to do it anymore. And it's reminds me of something that one of my professors in OT school said to me. And they're like, okay, well, you can share this, but you need to know your reasoning behind it. Like, why are you doing this? Are you just validating yourself? Are you, just needing, like, what is the reason? Because if you don't know the reason you're sharing something, it's not going to be met right. And
Mhm,
maybe it's too personal or maybe it's too triggering right now. Like, so
mhm,
having those like self-reflective tools to be like, okay, where does this actually come from? Where does this desire to do this? Or, and so I know I personally had to do a few more years of work before I could start something like this,
mhm,
because it is so hard. And, recognizing, okay, what part of me is hurting right now, or what part of me needs to be seen, or, knowing the purpose behind these things. And I love how
yes,
you're like, I don't do it anymore unless it's medicine for someone else. Because, like, you validated yourself. You've let go of that shame, and like those are the things that hold us back.
Mm-hmm.
But I think also those are the things that get us into the over explaining, the people pleasing, the, like the over justifying, the closing down to who we are and being a chameleon, right? Like those things, it's that shame piece. And I love how you touched on that so much, because it really is. It's like that shame. And for me, that, the pivotal point in my healing journey was when I started understanding like self-worth work and like the self-love wounds and things like that that I didn't have. And it came from a huge sense of shame in who I was and what had happened to me, right? And meshing them together, right? That who I am and what happened to me has to be the same thing. And so I created this narrative that was, well, I am a survivor. I'm gonna wear it like a badge. Like I literally, I was a teenager. I was like, I'm gonna write a book when I'm older, and it's gonna be from trauma to triumph, because this is not gonna define me, and I'm gonna triumph. Right? I was just convinced that mindset, that I got it, I did it, I won. Right? That mindset was going to serve me. And as I am growing more in my healing journey, I'm recognizing that it's not about the finish line. It's not about look who I am now because of all I've been through. It's about the journey itself. It's about finding yourself along the journey, the tools, the things that you do to get you there, and just knowing that the journey is more important than the destination.
Mm-hmm.
And the small pieces within the journey show us and give us the ability to act on who we are, right?
Yes.
And to show up authentically. And so, a question I have for you: what are some of the tools that you've used in your journey in overcoming? I know you mentioned like inner child things, you mentioned setting boundaries, and a couple others. What are some
Yes.
of, like, if you could give people, let's say, like 2 or 3 tools,
Mm-hmm.
things to work on, what would you say?
So after after breaking free of shame and starting to heal that, right? And working on myself, like how can I still be of service but still not take on people's things, so personal stuff, and then educating myself on what is actually healthy. After getting through that, it was really important for me to, on my journey, this, like you mentioned, it's an unfolding. So the last biggest chapter of, I'd say the last few chapters of my journey has been about identifying the conditioning that we have, like what is truly authentic self versus conditioned self.
Yeah.
And so this is a part of the shadow work. So shadow work's really important because you want to identify when a trigger arises. It's a message. Why is this trigger arising? What emotion is attached to this trigger? And then what limiting belief, what experience connects with that emotion? When was the first time I experienced that? And what was the meaning that I adopted? What did I interpret that meant about me? So doing the shadow work of self-beliefs, discovering what are the self-beliefs, and then identifying behaviors. Okay, you mentioned questioning why, if you're going to tell a story, what's the reason behind the story?
Mhm.
We got to do the same thing with our behaviors.
Absolutely.
Why am I doing this? Is it because because I have a fractured sense of self-worth and people pleasing and being a perfectionist and and these elements of codependency, and are these because I don't feel worthy and I'm trying to compensate for that? Or is that really truly your authentic self? And
Yeah.
so is really doing that shadow work is really huge, because I believe we are self-healers. We can heal ourselves. And so shadow work is really big. Community, connecting with community, that's huge.
Mhm.
Some of the things that I've trained myself in that have really helped. Well, so shadow work, education, that's huge. I could
Yeah.
not make the breakthroughs that I made without learning what is healthy love, what is true love versus what is not true love.
Mhm.
And had I not done that, I would have settled for less.
Well, and yeah, because you learned otherwise, without looking deeper into like literature and things like that, like you learned what that was in an unhealthy way. And so what was modeled to you was unhealthy. And so how are you supposed to know any different unless you
Mhm.
dive into these things and you get the education behind it? Love
Yes.
that.
And science has, it's there for us to learn. Okay,
Absolutely.
the field of psychology and the field of sociology, communication. You want to learn how to effectively communicate through conflict. This has all been discovered, what
Mhm.
works. So really being willing to study your evolvement. Like, how are you
Yeah.
going to evolve? So that's huge. And then there's some things that just can't be explained, that not that they can't be explained, but some things that just can't be remedied through shadow work and through education. And that's where I ended up going into extra work and studying and training.
Yeah.
So for instance, as a survivor, flashbacks are such, they're hard to get rid of.
Absolutely.
You get triggered, and you know that you're getting triggered because of the trauma, but the mind is really difficult to, like, your limiting beliefs, and is one thing to be conscious about it, but the subconscious, how
Mhm.
do you work with the subconscious mind that you feel like you're not worth, and you're not worthy, you're not enough? How do
Mhm.
you deal with these triggers that keep surfacing from your inner child? So I guess my answer is really like not one or two things. I'm kind of bringing it all, but
No, I mean, I think it's great. I
okay.
keep going. You're good. Keep
Okay.
going.
So with the subconscious mind, I love working with the subconscious mind and investigating it. So that's done through shadow work, of course, because
Mhm.
what is the motive behind, what is the belief behind the behavior? And that's really raising your self-awareness. That's awakening yourself to your reality, the reality that you're creating.
Yeah,
And
and real
so,
quick,
yeah,
when she's saying shadow work, it's like the idea that there are these light and these shadow sides of us, right? Like these, and like the shadow can be all kinds of different things, and feel free to correct me on anything if I'm wrong, because I'm fairly new to this. But it can be your ego or the traumas or the things that happen. It's created this almost like darker response that is, it's still a sense of us, but there are different motives behind it. And so the idea of shadow work is getting down to the motives of why you're showing up a little bit differently and how to integrate the dark and the light to find that authentic self within.
yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's parts of ourselves that were oppressed or repressed, emotions, feelings. There's also what's called the golden shadow, which I teach about in some of my courses. I've done a couple of workshops, that there's actually parts of us that have been repressed and oppressed that are actually quite golden. They're gold, and they're parts of us that really do want to come to light. But that's
Mhm.
for another day. But let me give you, look, for those of you who are not familiar with shadow work, let me give you an example of just like an easy little personal story of mine with shadow work. When I started stepping into entrepreneurship, that was a whole new realm. I felt like, wow, I really feel worthy. I have these flourishing relationships in my life, healthy relationships. And I thought I really felt a great sense of self-worth in my life. And that showed up in my relationships, right?
Mhm.
We don't have that, we attract unhealthy relationships, whether it is trauma bonding or if it's just we need to learn our lesson. We have to figure out our truth through that relationship, and that's why it's been attracted to us. But when I started entrepreneurship, I did some shadow work. Shadow work is investigating yourself, it's questioning yourself, it's journal work. And I asked myself, I'm wondering, okay, why am I having this hesitancy with my creativity? Why is it that I'm feeling these fears? Why am I feeling that I'm not enough when I put my work out there? And after doing some personal questioning, and one strategy for anyone that's interested in doing shadow work is, one strategy is called the 5 whys. So asking yourself why 5 times.
Mm.
Why this? And you give yourself an answer, and then you journal a little bit more. Why? Then why that? Why? And you keep going till you get to this core belief or this core wound
I
that
love
is
that.
like, oh my gosh, that's why. So for me, when I started doing the shadow work, it took me back to 7 years old. And I realized when I was 7, I was painting, doing watercolor. I was painting I thought it was the most beautiful painting of this vase with these purple tulips. And I was so proud of my work. And I put it up, and the teacher puts it all up on the board. And I just felt like, wow, I think I did amazing. I was really proud. I wasn't being competitive. I just
Mhm.
felt that my creativity was awesome. And the next day I come to school and I walk in. First thing, I walk into class, all the pictures are up. Everybody's painting, and there was a first place ribbon, a second place ribbon, and a third place ribbon on the pictures. And mine didn't have a ribbon.
Mm.
And I was crushed. I thought, wow, I really thought that I had a talent here, or that I was really creative, or that I did a really good job. I must be delusional to think that my work was really good. So I put the power of my creativity, the worth of my creativity, into other people
Yeah.
instead of owning it. So I did my own inner child healing with that. So inner child is really working with the parts of ourselves the that had these really impactful experiences that influence the way we think of ourselves today. So I realized, wow, I'm insecure about sharing my creativity because I wonder if I'm delusional that it's worthy. And so after healing that, I was able to step into my power of and the power that we all share, that your creativity is your own personal expression of who you are, and it is worth, it's priceless. And
Yeah.
you gotta own that. So that's just a little example of shadow work that I did that I it feels like very clear.
Yeah.
And that
Definitely.
incorporates a little bit of the inner child healing. So with inner child healing, there's parts of us. So with inner child healing, it's a matter of, simply put, it's a matter of acknowledging those really old emotional wounds
Mm-hmm.
and the interpretations that that little girl or little boy in you took on, and then having who you are today speak to that part of you and to make peace. And if it was, if there was something like that, let's say that the inner child didn't feel safe when she was a little girl, he was a little boy, just didn't feel
Mm-hmm.
safe in the household. When you create an inner child healing, there's an integration so that the part of you now can acknowledge and say, I'm going to keep you safe from now on. I know you didn't feel that, but I'm going to take that responsibility, so that your inner child is not driving the car of your life.
Mm-hmm.
It's your wiser, evolved inner parent in a way, or
Yeah.
love warrior, what it could be, what it needs to be for you. There's so many ways we can interpret it. It's like I said, we're self-healers. So if it's your inner superhero, you know, if that's who rocks it for you, that's what clicks it for you, then have it be your inner superhero. If it's a love warrior, if it's the mother archetype or the huntress, there's so many different archetypes if you look into Carl Jung, but it's so that's inner child healing, and that's powerful. Now going into, and thank you for listening so intently, the subconscious mind. The purpose of shadow work and inner child healing is to access the subconscious mind. Now,
Yes.
the subconscious mind is actually not a part of you that really you can communicate with very well. It's a record player. It literally just replays a loop. I'm
Yeah.
not enough, or I can't do this, or whatever it may be, these limiting beliefs or empowering beliefs, it
Mm-hmm.
plays it on a loop. Now, between the age of 2 and 7, we kind of our subconscious mind is open to everything. That's why we get very conditioned and programmed with other people's beliefs we might inherit or from our experiences. That's why it becomes so profound.
And we learn better during that time and things stick because it just sticks deeper into the subconscious, like learning languages and stuff.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So the subconscious mind is accessed through the theta brain wave activity, through theta brainwave activity. Our minds, when we're between the age of 2 and 7, we operate in mostly theta brainwaves. That's why it's everything resonates, it goes so deeply in, because
Mm-hmm.
our mind is, the subconscious mind is wide open for the taking, right? That's why they
Yeah.
say be careful what you say. Now, as we get older, we're no longer in theta. Actually, as adults, the only time that we have access to the theta, to the subconscious mind, right, the theta brain activity, is right before we're falling asleep and right as we're waking up,
Mm-hmm.
or if we go into a theta brain wave meditation and we actually
Yeah.
facilitate that for ourselves. And so that's kind of where, that's where I'm really geeking out with in the last the most recent research that I've been doing in the last couple of years is really looking into neuroscience. I geek out on, I'm really into neuroscience. I'm really into the subconscious mind, reprogramming those beliefs, questioning our conditioning. And that's what I'm doing to help others, is to awaken that part of self-awareness. And so part of that, the theta brain wave state through meditation, that's also that's hypnosis state. So when someone's taking you through hypnosis, that's what brain activity they want you to be in, is theta. So you're working with the subconscious mind. And so what I offer is, when I'm working with clients and educating, is how can you capitalize on the times that you're falling asleep or waking up, or go into like a theta meditation, so that you can reprogram these limiting beliefs that are holding you back from fulfilling your purpose, or to have the confidence to pursue your dreams, or whether it's to strengthen your voice. I'm finding that that's a big thing for women that I work with, is
Hmm.
trusting ourselves is a big thing.
Yes.
And then having the voice to speak up for ourselves, to speak up for our needs, wants, desires, and boundaries.
Yeah.
So that's something that's been really that I that has been really fantastic, with seeing the growth with the individuals and the beautiful women that come across my path that I get to work with.
That's amazing. Like, just it's incredible that as adults, we don't tap into that as much. And, there are ways that we can. So, question for you, has just got me curious. I know there's like some new stuff, and I haven't really seen any research one way or another, but like the binaural beats with the
Mhm.
different frequencies and stuff. Do you think that would have any possible effect, or, like that kind of thing? If that could
Yeah,
help tap into certain brain waves?
yeah. I mean, so the nice thing about the binaural beats is it's a frequency. So everything is like, even our emotions have hold a frequency. Actually, shame is one of the lowest vibrating emotions that there
Mhm.
is. And so for anyone that, if you're ever residing in the vibration, the frequency of shame, and you're looking to come out of it, an easy, quick way, go get a piece of fruit or a vegetable. I mean, organic fruits and vegetables have a higher frequency, or essential oils.
Mhm.
Essential oils will help you shift. So maybe the idea of going from shame to feeling grateful and loving and or enlightened, that's too far. You should see how many jumps it takes to get
Oh,
to that.
yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot.
But I
Something
find
that I
that,
might do, I might
yeah,
post the, frequency chart, like the spiral, so
yes,
that people can see alongside this podcast what we're talking about, because I think that'd be a really good resource for people.
yes. I did a reel on it a while ago, but and so, yeah, just to raise your frequency, essential oils actually are really jam-packed, high frequency. Actually, rose essential oil has one of the highest frequencies. It
Mm,
vibrates at one of the highest frequencies for all plants and for humans. And so I like
interesting.
to. Some people don't like the smell of rose. I love lavender. I love to create my own little blends. And so for me,
Mhm.
if I'm looking for, if I don't have time to meditate, but I'm feeling a little sluggish or I'm feeling a little off, I will just take a moment. I'll get some essential oils and I'll breathe in through your olfactory system.
Mhm.
Is super, super powerful. You want to
Yes.
shift your vibration, you want to shift your mood. Take a moment, just breathing in for just even 20 seconds can shift you. And then it kind of works its magic to resetting you. The power of nature is, I saw a quote yesterday, and it's beautiful, it's coming up, is that nature is one of the most neglected antidepressants.
Oh, so true.
Like
So
being
true.
in nature, using essential oils, like having an
Mhm.
herbal tea, the self-care that we can create for ourselves with that. And that's huge. That's free. It's Mother Earth is always there ready and waiting to support us and to
Mhm.
create the inner sanctuary within ourselves. So that's to answer your question. Yeah, the binaural beats it's a frequency, and
Yeah.
it goes at a certain vibration, and can balance the hemispheres of your mind and whatnot. I really love hearing language. Music is very powerful. So
Mhm.
I also say, I'm just going to say this here, as a trauma survivor, I oftentimes really enjoyed listening to music that I felt understood by,
Mhm.
that was like deep, and that I could be sit in the sadness with and really go there. But
Yeah.
I don't do that anymore,
I don't either.
because I know that it's not healthy. So I try to go into meditation, or I listen to music that's uplifting, and I try to come out of it that way, because it's still something that I'm working on, like in a way that it creeps up sometimes, these, and getting to know getting to know my rhythms. So,
Oh yeah. And I mean, you have to know yourself too. And like, I mean, I'm a proponent that like sometimes, like for instance, like when I'm having a really, really, really hard day, or like I just need to like process through something, not necessarily get out of it, but I know I need to process. Like I go to The Scientist by Coldplay. That is one of my grief
mm,
songs. And it just plays over and over on repeat. And I can almost completely zone out, and like it's just these tears that are just numb. And I'm not sure if there was like a significance in my childhood. Like I don't necessarily know the memory, but there's something about like the lyrics, can we just go back to the start? And it's just like knowing that like things happened. Like you can't really just change things. And so for me it's like a form of acceptance, but a form of processing as well. Um and so like sometimes I'll just have a whole day. Like it's actually one of my top, like the Spotify where it's like, what was one of your top 100 songs? Yeah, it's up there because I had some really hard days this year. So, and it's just on repeat. So, like whatever way you need to get through something, I think is okay. And the moment that you need to get to that point where you're like, I felt it, I'm processing, I just need to get myself out of this. That's
mhm,
when we recognize the power that everything holds. And you're right, it is the frequency. It's the frequency of these different things. Like every type of music, every song has a different frequency, right? And so it's like really being mindful of what you're listening to.
mhm,
For me, like the the news. I can't watch the news anymore. It is so negative, and it's just the point where it reprograms my brain to look for the negative. And a lot of things I got triggered by anyways. So for
mhm.
me, I mean, a lot of people are like, well, how are you going to be aware in the world? Something's big enough, someone will tell me. Like, you know what I mean? It's not like, and it's not to say that it's like inconsiderate or not caring what other things are going on. It's like at some point I have to protect myself. And I know that that lowers my frequency
Mhm.
for days, right? Because it sticks with you. So I think the more self aware you become and recognizing how things impact you, and if you're not someone who's comfortable with frequency or whatever, just know how things impact you, impact
Yes.
your moods, all of that thing. And recognize when you need to be, like there's certain things that we can do to get us back to a state we need to be in to be able to perform in our daily life or do what we need to do, right? And I love these tools that you shared, like even like the essential oils. Like I would love like if you have a resource or anything on like that you would like to
Yeah.
share for
Oh,
the
yeah.
different ones, that would
Yeah.
change my life. I know that. And I've always been drawn to rose, so that's very interesting to me.
Oh, yeah. I actually have
Yes.
there's a amazing woman. Her name's Deborah, and she's a fellow trauma survivor. She's now in holistic care, and she creates these blends, and it's a company
Mhm.
called Be Grace and Ease. And I love her blends, her essential oils, and I will definitely share with you. She creates
Yeah.
everything on her own, and I mean, I just love her so, so much. So the love that comes with it as well is really beautiful. And she's a scientist. She like geeked out on this. Like
I
she's doing
love
a
that.
chemistry, and she
Yes.
knows, like, it's really amazing. But I do want to, speaking of frequency, I want to share, like, because I've been so transparent about just who I am and what's worked for me, just to complete it all for those who are listening. Energy work has really been something pivotal for me as well. One,
Mhm.
knowing that we are all energy. So knowing when something triggers you, like, what does that do to your energies? Trusting your intuition, learning how to connect with who you, like, all of you, not just your physical. Yes, there's your nervous system, and that's tied in with energy. But I really love emotion code. If anyone wants to look up emotion code, that's really accessing the emotions that are trapped within your energy field. And I know I'm really geeking out here or going a little bit.
Oh
um
no, I love it. Keep
yeah,
going.
okay.
Go deep, go deep.
Okay, yeah. So emotion code is amazing. I have been able to access trapped emotions, which is compressed energy in my field. Like, and the thing is that our body wants to protect us, our mind wants to protect us. So emotion code has been really pivotal for me because it's brought into my awareness what my mind is trying to hide from me, right? In order to
Mhm.
survive.
Yeah.
So I've uncovered so much. I did a lot of mother wound healing through emotion code and releasing. And actually, emotion code helped me to get rid of the flashbacks. There were these three memories that just I could not get rid of. And even with EMI, which is similar to EMDR,
Mhm.
it was the emotion code for me that really worked because it brought up what was attached to those images, what were my beliefs,
Yeah.
What were the meanings that I was giving them? I
Where
was
is it
really
held in your body and
yes,
all that stuff?
yeah,
Wow.
in the
Yeah.
mind, and and so that's been really wonderful for me as the energy work. And so I like it all. I'm like, I geek out on the neuroscience. Let's get into developmental psychology,
Oh, yeah.
transpersonal psychology. Let's get into the energy work and energy healing, because we are all of that, and
Mhm.
we're all connected. The
Mhm.
Mother Earth, and like bringing in all of that. So that's who I am, and where I'm at is I'm like, okay, how can I bring all of this and into a neat little package,
Yes.
for other people to start integrating. And one of my hurdles is really had to be, well, who am I going to turn off by this? Who am I going to affect? And that's part of the inner
Yes.
child, like the fear
Mhm.
from being raised in the church, or like, and whatnot,
Mhm.
right? But
I am
just
so there. I am the person who has suppressed any kind of spiritual belief, anything that people don't see as mainstream, like, even until probably, like, a year and a half ago. Like, so there. I am so with you
mm,
that, especially when we know it's part of our purpose. Like, for me, this is holistic self-development. That includes physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual, and there's research behind it. People are like, "Oh, no, I don't understand the spiritual part of it, so no, you're woo-woo, or you're crazy," or whatever they wanna say. And it's like, the invalidation can keep us from bringing these important parts in, and it's like it's in there. It shows how powerful it is, right? And so I love that you're speaking on this and you have more of the science part behind it too, because I think that will help people understand how important it really is.
mhm,
So
mhm.
important.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I love connecting with you, and
Same.
it really is validating and encouraging and inspiring, because I have to realize that I'm not for everybody,
Mhm.
and that just because what some of the things that I have found that have worked for me to heal might live outside of someone's belief system, that doesn't mean that it's invalid, right? People
Absolutely.
people didn't believe in electricity before they're like, I can't see what you're talking about. What do you mean I'm going to be able to flip a switch and the light turns on? To them, that is outside of their belief system. So it seems miraculous.
Yeah.
But so I know that things are catching up. For instance, epigenetics. Okay.
Yes.
Inheriting trauma. Oh, right, right. You inherited. They have discovered it in science that we do inherit
Yeah.
trauma from our ancestors up to, I think it was 14 generations.
Yeah.
What? Whoa, right? So a lot of
Mhm.
this is starting to be discovered by science, and I really have been enjoying being able to share that more and more.
Yeah. Well, and I think about too, like, because when I got my doctorate, we talked a lot about research in the process, and it takes years and years and years of peer review and, having to get this as close to as scientifically sound as we can before things even get published. So, when we think about it, the research that's published is at least 5 years behind when they started researching it, right? And there may be
Mhm,
some differences for most, but like that's kind of the average that I saw. And so I would bet, I think of like mindfulness, meditation. That was considered like, oh, so like not okay, right? And like my entire project was focused on the impact of mindfulness for childhood trauma. Like, you know
mm,
what I mean? And there's so much research behind it that says it literally can change the brain back to some of the changes that were done with childhood trauma by
yes,
just certain practices in certain ways. And that would have been considered woo woo or too spiritual or whatever. But there's science behind it now. And so
yes.
I agree with you that I think, you're not for everyone. Yeah, I'm not for everyone either. And that's kept me small for a long time. But I think that also science is getting there to the point where this is going to be so mainstream in a few years that people, maybe a decade or so, but they're just going to be like, oh, it makes so much sense, and we're going to understand each other deeper. And just the way the
Mhm,
collective right now has even started gaining awareness into their patterns with 2020. Like when we look at everything happening with like racial inequalities and how these biases and how people are interacting, and like, the things that our belief systems and how people are showing up in how we want to help each other or not in regards to the pandemic, like there's just
mhm.
so much that has been shown, and so many people are waking up. Like this is a collective awakening. We're looking for the meaning of what is going on ourselves, what, our own patterns. Like that's what's happened in 2020. this pandemic, this collective trauma has allowed us to look deeper. And some people, you know, we just had the time, we were forced, either lost jobs or whatever. But also you're like, okay, well, this is a stressful time. What can I do to make myself feel safe right now? Right. And I think that a lot of trauma survivors have possibly had more awakenings earlier because sometimes that's what it takes, right? Like, I'm not safe. I'm not where I need to be. Like, how do I need to get to where I need to be? And, you know, for people who are experiencing that for the first time, this like heavy, consistent, toxic stress load, that it's allowing us to look deeper. And so, you know, I think the science and spirituality aspect, it's going to collide more and more in the incoming decades. And we don't know everything. We don't know everything. And there's still things that I can't explain. And I know there's things you can't explain, but it's our truth, you know? And so
Mm-hmm.
not being exiled for believing those things. And like, mark my words, we're going to 20, 30 years down the road, there's going to be things like understanding like the frequencies and like the collective consciousness. Like that's going to be science.
Oh,
I
there's no
promise you.
doubt. There's no doubt. I am marking your words because, and I also believe 100%. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thank you so much. Yeah. There's been in during this quarantine, after the truth was brought up and a lot of that emotion, it was like, okay, what have you unconsciously, what behaviors have you been doing that you're unconscious about, the motives or the beliefs behind that? So you're right. There's been a
Yeah.
huge awakening there and reflection. That's shadow work.
Mm-hmm.
That's truly like the
That's
shadow
it.
work that has been oppressed, repressed on a
Mm-hmm.
collective level.
Yeah,
Shadow work is at play.
absolutely.
And I couldn't be more proud of what we're doing as a collective as well during this time. And I think
Mm-hmm.
in its own way, there is definitely something divine about what's happening.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there's more to it, you know. We could go on about that. That's a whole
Oh, yeah.
that's a
But yeah, I
whole
know. We can always come back on. We can get deeper into the spiritual stuff. Like, oh, yeah. Like, you are welcome whenever.
Oh,
Absolutely.
thank you. Yeah, and I'm doing a lot right now. I'm studying neurocycle, so getting into the science of the how to reprogram self beliefs without going into maybe having to do meditation. It takes a little bit slower. So the subconscious mind, there's two ways to access it. It's through the theta, right? The theta brainwaves, or it's through repetition, habituation, not just
Mm-hmm.
saying an affirmation over and over. So that's what I'm going to be teaching a lot of in my upcoming course, the inner healing, self healing journey that I'm doing next month, teaching about how you can reprogram your own beliefs, by practicing these little strategies that have been
Yeah.
proven by science. So
Yeah.
it's exciting. Yeah, but I definitely want to come back
Mhm.
and talk with you because this is so refreshing.
Yes. Oh, yeah, I know. I'm like, oh, we just have so many like-minded beliefs. Like it's just I love it. I love it. And you know, I was afraid too. I was like, I don't know if with my, my trauma survivor following what they're going to think when I start incorporating more of my spirituality. Like I had a separate spiritual podcast and I realized that like that's only a portion. That's a portion of my passion, right? It's the holistic, like it's everything. And in honestly, like I am definitely a big proponent. I think the spiritual stuff and like the self wound and the self love, like that is one of the biggest things to help you, but it's only a piece. It's a piece to the
Yes,
puzzle, right? And
yes,
so, just being able to tap into that and to say, guess what? This is a piece. This is take it or leave it. That's fine. There are other ways to put this together. There
yeah,
are, right? But this is a piece that you and I have found as so important and as a tool for us to get to know ourselves deeper
yeah,
and heal.
yeah. And I don't know about other types of trauma. Yes, I did experience uh, physical abuse and emotional and mental abuse in my family, but the sexual trauma, that was a wound on the soul.
Yeah.
That surpassed like the mind.
Mhm.
Yes, it impacted the mind, of course, and my body, being triggered and not being able to control the emotional self. But
Yeah.
on the soul level, it's when you're robbed of your innocence or the shock that you experience, it's so deep. So how do you, in order to be able to heal that, you have to go that deep.
Yeah.
And so that's why that puzzle piece was so important to my journey. Whereas for others, it might be more of the brain work, more of the
Exactly.
emotional work, and maybe
Mhm.
it's a little bit of everything. But
Mhm.
yeah, so
I love it. Just makes me so happy. Well,
yes,
thank you so much for being here. And if people want to get in contact with you, where can they reach you?
I would say the best place to reach me is either wannessabadger.com. And my name is, yeah, it's like my name will be written out.
I'll have it in the show
And
notes.
then I also have the cyclebreakersclub.com that is a space for where I'm hosting my courses, breaking the cycles of limiting beliefs and emotional wounds and how to self-heal. But I'm evolving. There's a lot coming forth. And so if you want to stay in touch and you want to share, connection there, feel free to reach out there, and yeah, we can grow together.
Perfect. And yeah, I mean, it's okay for us to be evolving, right? Like I know I'm evolving as well. Like it's a constant journey. It's a constant journey of healing, overcoming, and finding ourselves along the way and claiming that.
Yes,
And I
yes.
that's I love how you said that's like that literally wraps up. That's what this whole podcast is about. That's what life is about. It's just
Mhm,
like it just goes together so beautifully. And I just want to end it on that note because that was wonderful. So,
mhm.
thank you so much for sharing your story and being here and all of your knowledge. I'm sure we'll connect again soon, and this audience will not be a stranger to you. And we will just keep moving forward. But to everyone listening, thank you so much. Remember, you have the power to transform your life. You do. And this is just one example of some of the things that you can do. And stick around, and we're going to dive deeper into some of the others. Also, like Reiki is another one too, where I'm going to have a guest coming on. So, there's just so many things that you dive into, and it's whatever works for you to help you reclaim yourself after everything that's happened. So, have a wonderful day and thanks for being here. Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.